Hello everybody, I'm SnipingIsFun, and I want to welcome all of you to my official 600th video here on YouTube. To commemorate the occasion, the special video idea I came up with this, with 600, was my actual return to my review series, me reviewing video games, which I had planned to do with my 400th video special when I did a review on Aladdin for the Super Nintendo, but I never got around to doing it since then. Now I officially want to do it because I was thinking, what could I possibly do? What could I do for my 600th video on YouTube that would be something special? Because every 100 videos on YouTube, I tend to do something special. My 500th video was when I answered those, why are you a Nintendo fan? Why are you a gamer kind of questions? Why are you like a Nintendo fan? And other people have actually answered those questions too. And I did other ones, various ones, like I said, my Super Nintendo review of Aladdin, and my first review way back in 2008 when I did my review of Ghostbusters on the PS2, and you know, a tribute video to my created wrestlers and stuff like that. I've done those type of ideas. I always want to do something special. I want to do something special every 100 videos on YouTube, and that's why I decided this time. I wanted to go back to a game review because I haven't actually really done game reviews in a while, because the last time I really did them was the end of 2010. It was like Christmas of 2010 was like the last time I ever really did reviews. And then of course, like I said, the Super Nintendo review of Aladdin. But that video, when I did that review, that was my idea, the plan on going back and actually doing game reviews, but I never got around to doing it, or I never really had games I really wanted to review or could review or something like that. You know, situations like that. This game now, I want to actually review. I want to do it for my 600th video, and I want to make it a start to me actually going back to the reviews I did from the end of 2008 all the way up to the end of 2010. And the game I chose to do, and you guys should already know what it is because it's up in the title of this video right now. The game I want to do for my review for my 600th video here on YouTube is The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword for the Nintendo Wii. Now, not only is this my 600th video, but the day it's coming to be released out on, November 20th of 2012, has a special reasoning for why I waited for this date to actually do this video. Because a year ago, back in 2011, was the day, November 20th, when Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword actually was released. So I'm officially doing this review on the 1-year anniversary of Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. I'm going to go through the story, the gameplay and controls, the graphics and presentation, and the sound/music. Obviously, whenever I used to do my reviews, it was these same settings, these same categories, alongside multiplayer. But of course, you know, like most Zelda games, there is no multiplayer in this game, so I cannot review any multiplayer for this game. Future games will have that. This game won't, so it'll be those 4 categories only. I hope you guys like this review. Stay tuned, and I'll show you can watch this review. The first category we're going to talk about in my review of Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword will be the story. Now, when it comes to the story of Skyward Sword, I personally believe, out of the ones I haven't played a whole lot of Zelda games. I consider myself a pretty big fan of the series, but I've never really played a whole lot of them, and I've only beaten a couple of them. But from what I've actually from me actually playing all the way through Skyward Sword, beating Skyward Sword back in April or something like that, you know, the story of it, I have to say, out of all the Zelda games I've played, Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword is probably one of the Zelda games I've played that has one of the better, well put together made stories. It actually has like a lot of development in terms of characters, a lot of development in terms of storyline. You see the emotions in characters, which really was never really shown much in a whole lot of past Zelda games, maybe due to technology, or maybe they didn't really feel like putting it in, you know, and basically it's like a good origin story. Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword is practically the origin story. It shows you like how Hyrule came to be, you know, what happened before, you know, Ganondorf and all that kind of, you know, stuff. All those situations happen in the later games in the series, and later games that happen in the Zelda timeline. This is the official, as of now. We don't know if they're ever going to change it and add a game before it, but as of now, Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword is the origin story. It's the story that happens at the way beginning of the timeline. The earliest story we know so far. And like I said, the story has a lot of development. You see a lot of development in terms of characters throughout this entire story, whether it be Link or the Zelda, the villains, the side characters. Some more so than others. Not everyone gets so much development. More so the main characters. You don't really see much development in side characters, but obviously they're side characters, so they probably don't need as much development as, say, the main characters. But you basically, you understand what I'm saying. It's basically the main characters go through more development than the minor side characters, which is practically what is to be expected of any game for that matter, because sometimes side characters can get like some kind of big story development, but they're not a main focus in the story, so obviously they aren't going to be a main focus in terms of development. But like the main characters from the likes of Zelda and Link and other side heroes, all the way up until like the villains, at least one particular villain do have some kind of like story development and character development through it. And the story obviously develops from point to point as you make your way through the worlds and you beat the dungeons and you beat the bosses and you meet other characters. You see other parts of the story and other characters just popping up, and they add their own little elements to the story. And basically it's the characters that really, in my opinion, drive the story in this game. Like a lot of Zelda games are maybe more so drawn by like the actual story itself and sometimes characters, but I believe Skyward Sword is one of those Zelda games that has like more so the characters drive you to go through. You want to see more of those characters. You want to see what happens to them. You want to see what is, you know, what's going to happen. You grow addicted to the story because you want to know what happens next. You grow attached to these characters. You want to see what happens. You want to see if they fail. You want to see if they succeed. You want to know what's going to happen to. You want to know what happens to Groose. Like at the beginning, he's a bully. You want to see, is anything going to happen to his character to the end? I'm not going to spoil anything. If you want to actually know what happens to Groose and all these other characters, you can play the game and find out for yourself. But I'm telling you, all these characters from Groose and, you know, Girahim, Zelda, and Link go through some sort of character development throughout this entire story, and you grow addicted to the story. You grow attached to these characters, and you want to see more of them. You want to continue the story and see what happens to them. And thus, since you grow so attached to the characters, and the characters help make the story and push it, it makes you, in my opinion, it actually makes the story quite interesting. And it makes, like, for a good story, because the story is built off of characters, and there's a ton of good characters in the Zelda Skyward Sword story. It just is, it's one of those things where it's like, you're going to grow you might not grow attached to every single character, but you're going to find at least, I can guarantee, you're going to find at least one character in this game you're going to grow attached to. And you're going to want to see all the way to the end what happens to them, and how they go along that path, along that journey to get to there. The next category I'm going to talk about for Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword will be the gameplay, the controls. Basically, Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword is the first ever Legend of Zelda game to introduce motion controls into it. When Twilight Princess came out, that game was originally a GameCube game, and when they ported it over to the Wii because they wanted it for the Wii's launch, it was basically just tacked on motion controls. This game is actually built from the ground up for motion controls and for Motion Plus in general. it basically it brings a whole new life to the series, because in the previous game all you did was tap buttons and like you use like the dual analogs or like the standard controls to move Link around and use like buttons to attack and use items. This game actually requires you for certain items to actually be like use items in certain ways, because mostly every item is basically different. You have to use like your bow. You're gonna actually have to pull the nunchuck back and actually fire. You have to aim. You have to use motion controls. When you use the beetle, when you use every item, it's basically different. When you have bombs, you can aim where to throw them, or if you want to roll the bomb, it's like all the items do a little bit more different. In past games, maybe they felt a little too similar because you basically were just using buttons. Now you actually get into the movement of the weapons, of the items. The control, for the first time really using this, it's not perfect, but a lot of the hatred you see towards these motion controls is not necessarily needed. It's not really there, because a lot of these controls, for a first time effort, they work really well. I mean, you're going to occasionally have some problems, but it's nothing that's game breaking, and you're going to get past it like right away. You're going to get past any annoyance of controls like that, and then you'll be able to move on and get the hang of these controls, and by the end of the game you'll know all these controls, because basically when you first get them, when you get the items, they basically give you like certain things to actually test your how to use these items, and then you start getting more and more be able to master them and know how to control them yourself, and you don't need those like tutorials, those helpful hints like when you first get the items to help you anymore, because now you grow attached to the weapons and you know how to use the weapons. And basically, in my opinion, I feel it's an improvement to the series, because it's like it makes it different than all the past games. Like basically every single past Zelda game, and if they can take these controls and take it into the Wii U Zeldas and even motion control based stuff made for the 3DS and any future console, they can improve upon this and make it more and more advanced, and make you really feel like Link or whatever character you're playing as in these games. This was the first start to it. Can you only imagine if they took this style and ran with it and made it better each and every game? It's just like, for a first time effort, I feel the motion controls work really well. Actually being able to use your sword like one-to-one motion, and use your shield with the nunchuck, and be able to fly your loft wing with your Wii remote in Motion Plus, and use your bombs and use your bow and all that stuff. It's just so innovative and different, because it's something we've never seen in Zelda before, and I think it's a good improvement to the series. Graphics and presentation will be the next category I talk about for Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. And this game, unlike the other Wii game Twilight Princess, basically offered, just like a lot of previous Zelda games, an artistic style. It basically had like impressionist art as like an art style. It was like a very artistic game. It was kind of like if you mixed Twilight Princess and like Wind Waker together and had some kind of Ocarina of Time in there. It's an art style that's not as realistic as Twilight Princess was, even though Twilight Princess wasn't really that realistic to begin with. It was more of a darker anime style, and like Wind Waker, that chibi, cutesy anime style. You mix them together, you get this. Like the characters are more realistic built, but they still have those exaggerations to them. There's exaggerated art style. Some characters, like builds that you pretty much cannot see in real life. So you have like that artistic, that exaggerated body, size. Like Groose, he's like really heavy centric, but his legs are skinny kind of thing. It's exaggerated and artistic and different and like anime-ish. It still has that anime style, basically like what Zelda normally has, but it's not as cartoony or chibi as like a Wind Waker or like the cel-shaded games, but it's not as realistic as like a Twilight Princess kind of thing. It's like a mix in between. It has its own light and dark elements. Like, just don't think that since it's not as dark as Twilight Princess, it's not going to have dark environments. There's some levels and some environments and some worlds in there that still have like those dark environments. like that are like, you know, darker themed. But then there's also those worlds, just like in every Zelda game, even Twilight Princess, that have the lighter theme to them, like, you know, the heart to them, the colorfulness, you know, the emotion, you know. It fit, like, all the environments fit the mood. That, like, if you are in like a dungeon, obviously it's gonna be darker themed because it's like a place where you fight enemies, and it's gonna be more like, oh, this is a place that is dangerous, and I'm gonna have to, you know, be careful and fight my way through it. And it's gonna actually, you know, mimic what you would expect, like a place where like the evil forces, you know, that you're fighting, the enemies, would lie. But when you're like in like a town, when you're basically like up, like with the civilians, with the people, with the non-playable characters, with the NPCs and everything, you're talking to them through the shops and everything, it's a lot more lighthearted because it's like a town where you interact with people to help improve your equipment and meet for like doing quests and everything, doing those side kind of quests and everything and stuff like that. It's like, it's an artistic style that matches the mood where it's at. It's not too dark, but it's not too light. It's not cartoony, but it's not realistic. It's in between. And for me personally, I'm like an artistic person. I like to draw. I like to be creative. And this kind of style really speaks more to me than something like Twilight Princess, being a little too realistic there, even though it wasn't realistic that much, like I said before. But it was trying to be more realistic and darker and stuff like that. But this game was more trying to be lighthearted, but still having those dark elements. And since it was really artistic, I like this style more because I consider myself an artistic person. I like I said, I like drawing, I like being creative, and this kind of art style really speaks to me more so than something like that. And that's why I'm more drawn to an art style like this than something like Twilight Princess. In my opinion, it has something for everyone. It's like, if you want realistic, maybe this isn't the place for you to look at it. If you want the Wind Waker style, this is not really what I'm going to look at it, but it's a good balance. And if you don't really care so much about it, you can go through the game and get like this presentation of the game where it's actually visually looks good. And it might not be the art style you like, but you're going to find something you probably would like. And it has like, it's a style that I could see people liking. It's just like that mix of a Zelda game that just works, in my opinion. And I'd like to see more Zelda games that are similar to this. We're obviously going to get more in the realistic Zeldas and the cel-shaded toon chibi Zeldas and stuff like that. But something like this, like a mixture, it brings the best of both worlds, basically. And something like this would actually be good for good future Zelda games, because it's kind of like a universal in-between kind of thing. Instead of going far off to the left or far off to the right, this would be something, in my opinion, I'd like to see more of in future games. The fourth and final category I'm going to be talking about in this review of Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword is going to be that of the sound of the music in the game. In my opinion, I think Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword is probably one of the best sets of music that I've probably ever heard in the Legend of Zelda game. A lot of people, when they think of good Zelda music, they think of Wind Waker, they think of Majora's Mask, they think of the original game, they think of A Link to the Past. They think of Twilight Princess. They think of every game. They think of their own series of games, especially Ocarina of Time. In my opinion, I think Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword matches up with each and every single one of them, and even surpasses a lot of them. This game has a lot of great music, and all of it fits each situation. When you're in the towns, it has its own music. When you're down on the fields battling, it has its own set of music. When you're from the volcano to the forest to the desert, when you're in dungeons, they have their own sets of music. Every music fits the situation. Obviously, like a lot of past Zelda games, so it's like you're wondering, like, how is that much different? Well, it just matches the situation. It feels different because this is the first Zelda, especially it feels different in the situation because this is the first Zelda game to have orchestrated music. So it does sound different. It does feel different. A lot of past Zelda games have like MIDI music, like, video game music. This is actually all this is the first Zelda game to actually have orchestrated music in it, and you could tell the difference. You could tell the emotion. You could tell the people who are playing their instruments to get this music, and like what you're supposed to be feeling every time you hear it. When you hear the love theme, when you hear Girahim's theme, when you hear Groos's theme, the battle music, the final battle theme, all this different sets of music, you have like this certain emotion you should get from every single one, because the songs are built to sound like that, and that could apply to every single game. That could apply to past Zelda games. But if you're comparing this to past Zelda games, of course it's going to sound similar, but I feel that orchestrated music to it will actually offer something different and make you feel like you're actually, like it's actually a different set of music, and it's like something that you can consider better than it, or worse if you want. If you're really nostalgic and like all your older songs, and like all the power to you. But I'm not saying, in my opinion, I think a lot of this Zelda music from Skyward Sword actually is really, it's better than a lot of that music, and it's like it's more emotional kind of thing. Like I said, since it's orchestrated this time, you can feel the emotion, like when you're supposed to be like with Zelda or fighting Girahim or in the boss battle or something like that, or in a certain environment. They have like they each have their own theme, and they each have their own emotion you should expect from it, or feeling when you're playing through it. In my opinion, a lot of the Zelda music from this game is going to go down as very memorable. From the main theme to Girahim's, all three versions of Girahim's themes, to both versions of Groos's theme, to a lot of the environments from the environments you meet, and like even the final battle theme and the ending credits theme. There's a lot of music in this game. I feel when people go into future Zelda games, they're going to remember. Oh, you're going to remember. I remember that Zelda Skyward Sword music. That was the first ever orchestrated music, but it was a lot of music that I know I'm going to remember for years to come. Basically, like people would say about Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask. It's going to be music that people are going to remember for a long time, especially that music that they like the most. So if you like the Girahim theme, you're going to remember that for years to come. Same thing with everything else. It's normally what you would see, but I think it's an improvement because it's orchestrated rather than like meaty video game music. And while that music's all good too, and I love myself the Wind Waker main music theme, the main theme of Wind Waker, I love that music. I love that song. I love a lot of other songs. This music's all good too. And I have a feeling if I ever did an updated version of my top 10 themes, my top 10 favorite my top 10 favorite songs from Legend of Zelda, a lot of the music is going to, I think it might be able to take one or two more songs there. I did basically Skyloft, in my top 10 list back from last year when Zelda Skyward Sword was coming out and it was the 25th anniversary of Zelda. I think I might actually put a few more songs in there if I had to do an updated list now. Maybe not, it wouldn't take over the list, of course, because I still have my favorite music from all the past games, but I feel it's going to actually get some more representation up there. I just feel like the music in this game is so good, and then when it comes to just the sounds of the environments, like certain creatures moving around, the certain little grunts people talk. Obviously, there's no voice acting, but just like every past Zelda game, you have little grunts from characters. They all fit, and it's like I think it was probably one of the more well put together sounds and music for a Zelda game. Now my final thoughts here on Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, this review, is basically this. I feel Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword is probably one of the better Zelda games I've ever played. Is it perfect? No. The motion controls are good for the first time, but they do have their own little, problems. But they're minor, people. Anyone that tells you that the controls are broken probably hasn't really played the game. I've played the game to the end, and I haven't played the hero mode yet, but I'm eventually going to go back sooner or later and play that eventually. But I've played the game to the end. These people probably haven't played the entire game. Don't let other people make your opinion for you. Play the game for yourself and form your own opinion. You can say whatever you want after that, but if you don't play the game and you follow what other people have said, you haven't even given the game your own shot, your own try. You're trying the game on your own. It's basically like I'm saying, like I don't think it's one of probably is not the best Zelda game, but it's probably one of the best Zelda games, on the verge of possibly being the best, but certainly one of my favorite. Probably one of my top 5 now. The characters, they're so lovable. You like them. You're going to grow to like Girahim, even though he's the villain. You're going to grow to get used to Groose. You're going to like Impa. You're going to like Zelda. You're going to like Link, even though Link's typically the same Link, but you know what I mean. You're going to grow to like these characters. And if you don't grow to like them, you're going to grow to have a certain emotion towards them anyways. You're probably not going to hate a single character in this game unless there's one particular character you guys might hate. Not going to say anything about said character, but I think you guys know who I'm talking about. And I don't find her annoying or anything, but other people might. And it's on the verge it could be, but I'm not going to say anything bad about it because it's like more of like a training, like trying to be there to help the player if they need it. And I think everyone now knows who I'm talking about. I'm not going to refer to them again, like who they are. I think you guys know who it is, but it has a lot of characters that you're gonna like, in my opinion. The story is, in my opinion, one of the better made Zelda games. It's a good introduction story. You learn a lot more about the characters later on, like Ganondorf and Zelda and Link, on where these people came from. You get to learn how Hyrule came about. What happens to other certain characters like Impa and what's about her. Stuff like that. You basically, the controls, you get to be Link. You get to actually get into the motion controls. Are they perfect? Like I said before, no, but they are good start. And if they improve on it for future games, you can only get better from here. And the graphics presentation, it's an artistic style. If you're not that type of person that likes that kind of style like I would be, maybe you wouldn't like it graphically, but that shouldn't really take away from the game, from the gameplay, from the story, from the characters, from the music. Don't let the graphics get to you. If you're the type of person that wants uber realistic stuff, you should never be expecting that kind of stuff from Zelda anyways. Twilight Princess, people are like, oh, it's so realistic, but it's not. It's like dark anime style. And I'm not trying to turn this into a rant or anything. I'm just saying basically like that. All I'm saying is this. My opinion, Zelda is a great, Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword is a great Zelda game. If you're looking for that next big Zelda game, and if you want to just play it to try to see if you can get into the Legend of Zelda series, or if you're a longtime fan, I recommend this game to you. If you're just trying to get into the Zelda game, this will probably be one of the best ones to get into, because when you start off, it helps you get used to the controls, and then as you play, you'll get used to them. If you're a longtime fan, you'll get used to this stuff anyways, even with the tutorials. Basically the characters are going to grow on you, unless I'm not saying everyone's going to like every single character, but I'm saying you're going to find at least one character you're going to like. The story, I believe, is a good introduction story to the Legend of Zelda series. The first story in the timeline, first game in the timeline. The motion controls are pretty well put together and helps you start feeling like you actually are Link. The music really fits the tone, and for being the first orchestrated soundtrack, it actually really works, and it actually makes itself feel different than past Zelda games. And the graphic presentation is a mix of darker and lighter styles, a mix of that Wind Waker and a mix of that Twilight Princess style and a more artistic style, like impressionist art. And in my opinion, is one of the, and I recommend it. Like I said, I recommend it to anyone who's a long-time Zelda fan or a person who wants to get into this series. It's probably the best one for you to get started in, and so on and so like that. And that's my review of the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, people. A 1-year anniversary of it today, November 20th, 2012. And as for a score, I'm going to give Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword for the Nintendo Wii a 9.5 out of 10. It has some problems, reason why I'm not giving it a 10, but it's, in my opinion, a very well put together game, graphically, musically, character-wise, gameplay, controls. It deserves that 9.5. I'm SnipingIsFun. I hope you guys like this video. Peace. Please subscribe if you want to, and stay tuned for my next set of videos, now that I'm here, and my 6th year here on YouTube. See you guys later.